Greetings and welcome to the 80 Level Roundtable podcast. In each episode, host Kirill Tokarev invites video game industry leaders to talk about the world of game development. No topic is off limits as long as it relates to video game development. New episodes are in the works, so remember to follow us or subscribe and share with someone you know will also enjoy the podcast.
Guys, thank you so much for joining me. And can you do like a little intro? Tell us a little bit about yourself, where are you currently based, what do you do, and a little bit about your company.
All right, good. I will start, I guess. So my name is Alex. I'm a co-founder of iLogos Game Studios. I'm actually in the games industry since a while. So started about 20 years ago. Was one of the first pioneers in browser-based gaming back in the initial era of browser games, which was especially strong in Europe, in Germany, in CIS countries, and some other countries. So I actually developed one of the first Flash-based MMO RTS games back in that day. And actually, then I had quite a turbulent time in different companies. So, for example, headed Mail.ru Games Europe for a while, and did also quite a lot with publishing of different online games and MMO games. So it was actually a really, really cool experience. And then I've co-founded iLogos Game Studios, which was, I need to say, actually founded a little bit before my time. So I was like a late co-founder, let's say. So I joined the company as as an equal partner, and then we actually started to do even more exciting things. And about iLogos, what we do is essentially game development. So we are a studio and a company which actually works on different projects for primarily mobile game development, but not only. So what we do also more and more are PC and console games in different forms and shapes. So we help to develop them. We develop them from scratch. We do live ops for them. So a lot of different cool things, and also do porting. And we work with a lot of well-known names in the industry like Ubisoft, EA, Rovio, Games, Vuga, and many, many, many more. So quite a solid roster. And yeah, as I said, so it's really primarily about mobile gaming. And also, by the way, it's important to mention that we also actively look into, we are looking also into some new areas like NFT and blockchain gaming, which is really overhyped right now, but I guess we can talk about it a bit later. So that's in the nutshell what we do. Svitlanka.
Yeah, thanks Alex for such a comprehensive intro. So my name is Svitlanka. I'm a member of the board of directors in iLogos Game Studios, and I'm in charge of the whole customer operations of the business and business scaling and growth. I have been working with the customer operations and business development in various directions of software development, iGaming, and consequently gaming too, for 10 years. And my mission inside the board of directors and inside the business of iLogos Game Studios is to bring all the best that currently the service business arena has to offer, and to build out the, I would say, like 2.0 customer service and customer scaling standards inside iLogos Game Studios. And Alex has explained what the company does in a nutshell, so I'll just be happy to reply to any questions in more detail later.
Awesome, guys. So can we talk a little bit about outsourcing as a whole? Like what is this market right now, where it's going, and what are like the main driving forces to kind of push companies to use outsourcing in general?
That's a good question to discuss. So, outsourcing market in game development in general is very quickly developing. There are like more and more studios growing right now, and the studios that have been there for a while are growing. By the way, for example, in iLogos Game Studios, we have grown just like 2x, 2x over the last year. Speaking about the core drivers of the development of outsourcing business in game development, first of all, there is a huge demand because the market is growing. The market is constantly bringing up the new directions, just like, for example, blockchain gaming or NFT gaming, where there's lots of capital inside. And it becomes more and more clear that if the game developers decide to do it all on their own, it would either be extremely hard for them to cope with all the scope that they are required to cope with, and it would be hard to meet the market momentum, not to lose that momentum and to release in the right time and to make sure it hits the right audience in the right moment. As the demand is growing, the proposal is growing too, consequently. And inside the game development outsourcing, there are the directions with, I would say, like more narrow specialization, like art outsourcing or specific visual effects outsourcing or development outsourcing. And there is a direction of more like full cycle 360 approach to game development as a whole. Also, the outsourcing market of game development can be classified through specializations on the certain style, whereas we can define, for example, AAA studios or the studios specialized on a certain technology vertical like Unreal Engine or Unity, or the studios specialized on specifically mobile casual gaming, and so on. So right now, the market is quickly emerging, and I would, if I was asked about the main trend that I'm seeing right now inside the arena of the outsourcing business, I would say that this is a trend to a huge change and the transformation, because the market becomes more competitive, the rules become more strict, and there's the jungle rule comes here: go big or go home. So it's getting more and more complicated for the smaller studios to retain talents, to retain the projects and still stay profitable, because the demand is growing, the capital inside the game development market is growing, the value of the talents is growing too. At the same time, if the studios and when the studios decide on going big or going home, this is the point where they start, growing and winning. So it's more or less it, but maybe you wanted to know something more. You wanted to know something more specific.
I actually have a question for Alexander, because I know Alexander from the Flash scene like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to hear your perspective of how like video game development and publishing and just kind of just making a profitable game changed. Because from my perspective, when it was Бойцовский клуб and all those kind of older titles, you didn't really need that much resource, right? You just go there and the audience was there, and you didn't really have to fight for it that much. And it was very easy. You put, Xsola in, you get the payments going, and that it's basically done. Right now, it seems like the barrier of entry of all although the technologies are kind of getting easier, and it's like more people available doing like C# or C++, and art is also readily available, but the bar is so high, and the customers, are so picky, and it's just incredibly difficult to launch this product and make sure that it's, it makes money. And
Absolutely.
we talked with guys from Mail.ru, a bunch of other companies, and and all of them are saying is that the thinking process before we launch anything is incredible. They're trying to plan everything. They have all those business models and trying to make sure. So my question is, how does outsourcing sort of fit in this new situation right now? And Svitlanka kind of mentioned it a little bit, but it would be nice to get in like from more practical, kind of like the founder approach. You know what I mean? Like if I were to go and invest like $1 million or like $5 million in a game, what part of it would go to outsourcing?
All right. Yeah, it's a great question. You're absolutely right. The time are totally different, these days, so compared to 20 years ago, especially in browser gaming, where it was completely feasible and completely okay to just start a new browser game with a few guys. So it was a lot of stories like InnoGames, for example, just a few students who just started, to create the first game, the Tribes. Then it became a massive international success, and there were a lot of stories like this. So it was a really, really nice time. So these days, especially on mobile, you have to be very careful in what you do, how much, you have, how many resources you have to plan, for the game to be able to succeed, let's say, and what kind of, let's say, art assets you need to design in order to be competitive on the current mobile game market. So, for example, I don't know, if you plan to do a hardcore RTS game on mobile, you will most probably fail. So you need to know your market fit, market product fit. You need to understand what the tastes of the audience commonly are, unless you plan for a very, very narrow niche and you really know how to promote your product in that niche. So it may be, I don't know, Twitch based or something different, so something totally out of the usual, route how a mobile game would be usually marketed. So it's a very good question. Obviously, now these days, a lot of people start to design a mobile game even before the game exists in any kind of prototype. So a lot of in a lot of cases, it's really only about to do some marketing tests, some creative tests, and see if this kind of game would actually have a lot of clicks and good CTR rates and some decent marketing stats. And if the marketing stats are looking good, then obviously you can go ahead and then you can just design and develop the full game in the hope that during the development the stats are not too much off from the initial stats, right? So it's also a very important factor which many companies tend to forget, that obviously if you make a test marketing campaign in January, it can be a totally different outcome maybe in, I don't know, November, the same year, because the market is changing so rapidly, day by day. So obviously, if you work with a small team or in a small team, you need to know what is your scope of the content. So how much art you need, how many developers you would need for the planned functionality. Obviously, as also Svitlanka said, the resources are very scarce. So according to some of the statistics, currently there is a lack of about 40% of the workforce for game development. So essentially, it's a huge number. So obviously, almost half of the people is just missing for creation of games. So obviously, one of the ways how to actually make the game happen, obviously, is to just use the outsourcing and some external studios, external partners, maybe freelancers. So I would say that a team, especially a small team of indie developers, whoever, who would like to create a game for PC, Steam, for mobile, for some other platforms, needs to be aware what are the capabilities that they possess, what is the amount of content they want to create, what is the overall roadmap of a game, basically. So how many months you would like to have the game development, to be actually done. Yeah, so let's say half a year, 1 year, 2 years, whatever. So if you have this solid planning and you know that you lack a lot of resources, then obviously outsourcing is a good way how to cope with it, how to basically make it happen, make the production happen. But obviously, it's very important that you really pay attention to the quality level, because, for example, from our experience, there are a lot of small studios, small outsourcing studios in different parts of the world, and some of them can appear extremely cheap and extremely inexpensive. But the problem is that sometimes the quality is just really not up to the quality level that a small studio would like to see in the final product, and then obviously you need to redo, in the worst case, a lot of art assets, because then you get something which you cannot use, or you have huge delays. Even if you have not lost the money, then you have lost some time. So it's a complicated topic, but I would say that first of all, you need to be aware what exactly are you going to create, what are your internal resources, and what are you missing. That's it, basically.
Guys, I have a question. You kind of touched on the quality, and you talked a little bit about the needs of customers. You mentioned indie developers for a number of times, but it seems like, and from my perspective, especially here, like in California, with a lot of large companies, this is like capacity in any company that we meet is scarce. So basically,
absolutely,
everybody
yes.
wants to do more that they are capable of doing. So it seems like outsourcing becomes something like, you kind of have to rely on it. It's not something that you choose
I agree.
not to. And from economical standpoint, it also sometimes doesn't make sense. You don't need like 100 artists to do whatever you do. And then what are you going to fire them? And a few companies like maybe Blizzard, maybe some like of the big guys can allow, to spend millions of bucks and people are just drawing rocks or, textures on that kind of stuff. It's super expensive. So my question here comes into maybe Svitlanka, and you can kind of pitch in. So how do you compete? So it seems like if you compete with price, obviously it goes nowhere, because you can only go this far, but then it kind of doesn't make sense because you need to spend more time and money on improving the assets of lower quality, and it just makes sense just to pay whatever the market rate is. So if it's not the price, and we still know that the price is important, although some people might say price is not an issue. It is always an issue, but still, if you don't take that factor in, so how do you find your clients? How do you kind of explain the value of your business to them? How do you kind of win deals, and how do you make sure that they choose you? Because there is, I can name like 10 companies here just in my area where I am in US. And then if you go in Ukraine, there's like a lot of very good companies out there. You got Room 8 Studios, you got a bunch of like smaller ones. If you go to China, you got like Keyword Studios, which is crazy. It's huge. It's like Microsoft, it seems. And
absolutely.
And so on and so forth. So how do you kind of find your way in this market?
Okay. Yeah, sorry, Svitlanka, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
All right, I'll start, and maybe Alex will have also something to add. So I totally agree that competing in price in the current market of the game development, external development, doesn't make sense, because it's a road to nowhere. Because even if you do a completely not profitable project built totally on loss, there will still be someone who will make it cheaper. So it's definitely not the option to compete in the price. Still, as an outsourcing business, as a service business, the business does need to have its unique sales proposal. In iLogos, how do we solve this issue in iLogos Game Studios? In iLogos, we position ourselves as an external developer or outsourcer with the product expertise. So we are not just a company, a vendor that is providing the development services. We are a solution provider. So we provide the solutions to the client's needs. And we care not just about, the bunch of tasks that we need to complete in order to get the money. We would rather care about the whole product result that the client is about to receive, what kind of business value the client is about to receive, and how we can help the client generate this business value. Because in case we speak about the business value that the client will receive, for example, I would mention iLogos has been working on developing Angry Birds 2 for Windows, basically porting to Windows, that helped the game get like 100,000 daily players, which is like a business result. And in case you put the business result as a priority, this is the point where you start delivering the real value and where you understand together with the client that it's not about the hourly rate being paid to your developers, like $2 or $3 higher or lower. It's about the final value that the business is getting and a matter of being ROI positive, return on investment positive. And we have plenty of cases when, for example, we're operating live operation for certain games. And during the timeline of our cooperation, they're growing in revenue. For example, they triple in revenue, or they get doubled in revenue. And in such situation, yeah, they could go with a cheaper studio, and they would definitely have less expenses in this case. At the same time, if we evaluate the total cost of ownership, and if we evaluate the actual result the business is getting, it appears that it's fine to go for a higher rate for getting a higher result that is like exponentially higher, not just like a couple dollars higher. So definitely it doesn't make sense to compete in price, but it does make sense to compete in expertise and to compete in product vision. And lots of talents, basically the key talents that we have in iLogos right now and that we are involving into iLogos at the moment, they all have the background working with big products, with some really strong, great products in the world. And that is why we are nurturing this product expertise and like understanding what the client is getting from the product standpoint. And one more thing, in the previous question, Alex has mentioned that it's important to for a studio before going into outsourcing to understand what kind of scope they need to produce and understand what kind of capabilities they possess at a certain time. At the same time, there are a lot of companies like IP owners that are willing to develop the game based on their IP, and it's hard for them to even evaluate what kind and which amount of content would be involving enough and things like that. And here, just working hands wouldn't work for them. What would work for them is a partner with a product expertise that would help them navigate them through the journey of turning this IP into the right game, with the right title, with the right involvement and metrics. Alex, maybe you also wanted to add something.
Yeah, I can just also briefly add that obviously the games market in total is a huge market, right? So we are talking, according to different estimations, about a market which is between 175 billion US dollars up to the maximum, estimate of about 350 billion US dollars. So obviously there are a lot of things that needs to be done, needs to be created. So obviously it's about art assets, it's about development on the front end, on the back end, it's about porting, it's about visual effects, it's about so many different things, animations and so on. So if an outsourcing studio, an outsourcing company focuses on a certain part of this entire, let's say, creation chain, and is really profound in what it does. So for example, if a company is a very good specialist in visual effects and not so many companies around the globe can compete with it, then obviously this segment of the market would be a natural good niche for such a company to be really competitive and to be really sustainable, and not even companies like Keywords would be able to attack it that easily. Also, I have to say, by the way, that some of the biggest players on the games market, they are not really fond of the idea that one company controls all the outsourcing. I can tell you for sure, according to my talks with some of the biggest players, they are really not fond of the idea that companies like Keywords will actually control the entire outsourcing market and say, okay, we can control everything, we can dictate you the prices, we can dictate you our terms. That's definitely what EA, Ubisoft, Activision would want. They actually hate this idea. And this also allows a lot of other studios to be successful, because oftentimes you will just find that a certain project is not given to companies like Keywords, also because of such fact, right? So yeah, I think that overall there is a lot of things which are important for the consideration how smaller studios can compete against Keywords, and they also actually effectively and successfully do.
So what you're saying is basically the nature of the market, because if the bargaining power of the supplier, and let's consider outsourcer as a supplier, if the bargaining power grows, too much, and it influences the core business, like the gaming business, that's why they're trying to find the other players, so the market kind of balances itself out. But you kind of touched a little bit about the business expertise, and I think this is one of the values that iLogos kind of presents, because I know that you had successful projects of your own when you were working before. But my question is kind of connected with porting. I really like this direction, and I'm very interested to hear Svitlanka's and Alexander's look at it. So we have a platform, iOS or Android, where you have this hundreds of thousands of games, very competitive market, incredible cost of user acquisition. And some companies are trying to see how they can monetize their games and franchises outside of it, right? We saw a lot of games being ported to Switch right now. You've mentioned yourself that there are some, people are moving games to like PC. What's your take on that? How do you see iLogos in that kind of direction? How do you help with porting? And why does porting make sense, or maybe it doesn't make sense for mobile games? Because it is kind of like a niche thing.
I can briefly comment on this. So essentially, indeed, it's a very important part, and I think that a lot of mobile games creators, they just underestimate the power of such consoles as Nintendo Switch, and maybe also PC and some other consoles, and some, I would say, rare cases. So Nintendo Switch is more, of course, of the match for the mobile games compared to, I don't know, Xbox or PlayStation, obviously. And we also, by the way, we actively port games from mobile to Nintendo Switch. So we did it also many times. One of the most famous port is a game Shadow Fight, which is published by Mekium. So it's a wonderful game. And I would actually encourage everyone to play it on either platform, because it's just awesome. It's a beautiful fighting game, and for such a fighting game, obviously, which is kind of like Street Fighter kind of games or Mortal Kombat kind of games. So basically, the match from a mobile screen to a Nintendo Switch screen is very close, because obviously it's about fighting context on a smaller screen. It's very important that obviously we did the entire UX and UI overhaul. You need to use joysticks instead of tapping on the screen, or instead of virtual joysticks, better to say. So obviously this component is extremely important, and I think that what is really important for any kind of porting from mobile is indeed how to make the UI right, because even if you face some technical challenges on the porting itself, so obviously you need to know the console, you need to know the SDK, you need to have the dev kits, the test kits, and so on and so forth. So let's say you have this all, but still you also need to understand how to tackle all those little things, let's say, about the usability, about the gameplay ability, let's say, of such games. And this can be a key factor in a possible success or failure of such games. And I personally think that there is a huge room for a lot of cool games. So for example, I just recently played a game which is called Head Quest with my little son. And this game is available on iOS, Android, and also Nintendo Switch. Unfortunately, we did not do the port of it, but I have to say that it's done really perfectly. It's a brilliant example how a really cool RPG game for mostly for children can be really effectively done on all these platforms. Essentially, you can play it really well, regardless if it's iPad, if it's Nintendo Switch. And this is something which we definitely see as part of our core expertise on the porting. That we also have people in our team who really understand how to tackle all those things in regard to the playability and gameplayability on different platforms.
Thanks, Alex. You've outlined it perfectly, and I would add that there's a lot of hidden potential pitfalls that the game developer can face porting something for the first time, because all the time it's important not just to replicate the game, but there are often the UI adjustments. Often the porting, like in our case, we have the cases when porting is also involving the mechanics adjustments to make sure that the audience that is using, for example, Nintendo Switch is feeling comfortable with this certain game. So there are like mechanics adjustments or even monetization adjustments. And it's just important in such case when starting to port to choose the partner that has expertise with the platform and that would be able to outline that potential pitfalls and advise on the suggestions beforehand.
Thank you, guys. I think this is a very interesting topic, and more developers should kind of look into how they can give another life sort of to their game on another platform. I think it makes total sense business-wise. So let's move to another topic. So blockchain, crypto, NFTs, we are living through like the next crypto spring or whatever. Bitcoin is going through the roof. All those words are kind of like the hype right now. Where are you in this position? Are you among the companies who are kind of getting involved? If you're getting involved, in what capacity, and what are you doing in that space?
Okay. Yeah, I can briefly outline what we do right now with all those overhyped, buzzwords. I have to say that I personally hate the buzzword metaverse because I think that nobody truly understands what this buzzword.
Yeah, what does it
really
mean? What does it mean? Nobody knows.
Exactly. So I like more the word meta game, and such things like, let's say, games within a game and so on, like Roblox, for example, and so on. So it can be UCG based, it can do, whatever based, but metaverse itself is just overhyped, clearly, and also NFT is kind of a little bit overhyped, and we clearly see that, there is just too much buzz around this word. But I have to say that I think personally that NFT is a really good, let's say, path ahead of it. So I think that there will be a good part of the market which somehow uses this concept, not necessarily based on blockchain and NFT, but at least the concept of play to earn, the concept of obviously that there is something that a player can retain from the game and maybe also sell it to other players. So some kind of digital good, digital artifact, let's say, based on a certain game. And obviously, I think that there is some really good actually point in why NFTs in games can be used for sure, not necessarily that they should be used. And that's what we see right now, that a lot of a lot of IDOs and ICOs in this space, they just tell us that they will create some ultra cool game where you can do everything and own some magical NFT, which will magically, make you rich, which is obviously not really something which I would say makes sense. It's not. But on the other hand, and by the way, also there are some really big stories, like there is a game which is called Star Atlas. It reminds me heavily on Star Citizen. I have a very big suspicion that it's going to be the same fate as Star Citizen has right now. So we will never see a game done. So let's see how it goes. But unfortunately, so there is a big part of such stories which clearly looks like more like a scam, obviously, to be honest. But again, I think that a lot of things can be born out of it. I think that a lot of interesting ideas will be evaluated on the market. We are also, by the way, creating now several NFT-based games, and these are games like, for example, basketball star-based games where obviously NFT is a very essential part in the entire gameplay. So obviously a collection of basketball players, and it also, this also makes sense. So you can think the same about any kind of sports game, be it soccer, be it, I don't know, football, be it hockey, whatever. So you name it, maybe martial arts and so on. So I think that everything which can substantially have a good underlying collection of something, be it players or teams, whatever, which you can own for a bit longer period of time than just maybe for the gameplay of 1-2 months, and then you basically spend your time for nothing and made also money. I think that every player of FIFA knows how it feels if you spend a lot of money on your ultimate team, and then there is the next version of it, and essentially you have to start over, and so on and so forth. So I think that there is a really, really good point and why NFT is an important, interesting vector of movement. But on the same time, I think that many publishers will actually try to prevent it from happening, because obviously they will lose power. They would not control anymore, at least not fully, the marketplaces, the digital goods, within the games. So I think that we will see some struggle. And some of the biggest publishers, they will probably be very cautious in what they do with NFTs, how they design them, if they even use them, even if they are even willing to consider them somehow. So let's see where it goes.
Alexander, I have to ask. I'm sorry, Svitlanka. One more question. So, Steam kind of banned all the crypto and all the NFT stuff.
Right.
So what do you think is the reason behind it? Because in my like kind of in the perspective of a person who's not really into Counter-Strike skins, it does look very similar to whatever the Valve itself was doing with all the in-game economy.
Right.
So why would they ban it? Is this like competition again, or?
I think it's about the competition, honestly. I think that's exactly what I was just actually speaking about, that the publishers who fully control a marketplace right now, like, in case of Valve, it's obviously Steam, where they control everything, more or less, at least with their own games, like, Dota 2 and Counter-Strike Go and so on. So essentially, they would feel out of control if this path would actually go further, and if some of the games that would appear on the platform would actually prove that this open marketplace would make sense for their players. So I think it's like a prevention strike, maybe. So then they thought about how to prevent it from happening and how to not give the power of, let's say, market making and market taking to the players themselves, and how to leave this entire power in their own hands. It might be one of the explanations of it. But I was actually also surprised, and I was even more surprised afterwards, as Epic Games Store actually committed themselves to NFTs, even though Tim Sweeney is known that he is very suspicious about this entire topic and considers it.
I have a theory about that. I have a theory about that. I think that so basically Steam is all about the players, so they want to have good relationship with players, and I feel that they are afraid that if the crypto guys are gonna go on Steam, it's just gonna turn in another super rare or whatever.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Steam, they are all about developers. They want to attract developers, so they want to whatever. If you want to do NFTs, do NFTs.
Just do something.
Just do whatever. As long as you're staying with us. So maybe it's one of the. So guys, thank you for your time. I have one more question though. It is kind of connected with the NFT space and also retaining of talent. So I know that, and I work with a lot of outsourcing studios and with a lot of not outsourcing studios, they're creating products. And one of the key things that they are all fighting with is retaining talent, because if it's a high level talent and they are in demand, they switch. They basically go from one project to another project to the third project, and they are, very mobile. If you don't have kids and you don't, you can do basically whatever. And how do you fight with this? Like, do you create options inside the company to keep people in? Do you do like rev share initiatives where let's say you would be selling NFTs and the guys would be getting like a percentage of that NFTs or something like that? Like what what are the ways that you're making people stay? How do you help them grow, develop, and make sure that they kind of won't stay in your company? Because we've seen stories where very large organization in the video game space, they are kind of having trouble with that. They don't know how to build this culture where people are, content and they are happy and they want to work there. So what's your take on that?
That's a good question, and I would say that it's a very hard question right now, because if we look at the game development and outsourcing space, let's take, for example, Eastern Europe and Ukraine in particular. The average employee lifetime, basically the employee time spent in a certain business, is 2 to 3 years. In iLogos Game Studios, our average is 4 years and something, which is like higher than the market standard. And we have plenty of people. I'm always, amused when I'm getting these mailings from HR department saying that these like 10 guys have celebrated their 10th anniversary with iLogos or their 11th anniversary with iLogos. Speaking about the recipe, obviously, well, there are a lot of points and a lot of factors that influence this. The great talents definitely want to work on great projects and definitely want to develop their talents and to be able to try something new. So the recipe number one would be becoming an employer that is able to supply the talent with the interesting projects and that is able to to give them the opportunity to try something else, to switch, and not to be kind of bound for all their lifetime and sign the company by one title, because people often feel might feel kind of demotivated when they understand that, all right, I'll spend like the next 7 years of my life on this title. Whereas in case the company gives the opportunity to try to work on this project and deliver value there, and then go develop the talent and get an opportunity to work, let's say, if we speak about art, develop the skills in the art style with the projects with, let's say, higher requirements and things like that. So being able to offer people the options to work with great world-known projects and to switch, not to feel kind of overwhelmed and tied to one for all their lifetime. This would be the recipe number one. The recipe number two would be actually building the right business culture, the right corporate culture, and actually being a great employer. Because the question of the corporate culture is still not that popular among the studios. It's still kind of perceived more like formally, all right, we'll write these couple words about, I don't know, like company values, or we'll write about these couple words about our company's like ethical policy. These are just two like pieces of paper. Okay, we read it, we put the check, and we forget about it. if the business is creating the corporate culture that is truly uniting the talents and driving them and motivating them, staying together and driving something inside a community that shares the values, their life values, this is also a huge argument, and there is a lot of work behind building this kind of corporate culture. And this is definitely a big direction for investment, for the modern studios, be it product and game development studios or outsourcing studios. The other important point is actually the sincere and serious attitude towards the company values, not just in the words, but also in practice, like being able to follow them. And for example, in case the business value is care and trust, it means that if your talent is in trouble, you do act based on the value of care and trust, other than just saying, okay, we're like concerned, just get out of your trouble and then come back. So it's also important, and the talents feel it, and this is often what motivates the talents stay with the business for a long time. And also the recipe number 4 would be selecting the talent that is enthusiastic about the project, about the product that they work on. Because there are people, like I recently talked to the developers here in iLogos, and they were saying, I love butlers, I play butlers, I spend my free time playing butlers, and I want to develop butlers. So it's important to select the talents that are enthusiastic about what they do, and that are excited seeing what they do in production. Because in case it's treated just like a job, okay, I come at 9, I do several lines of code, and then I leave, this wouldn't probably work in the long run. That's
cool. Great answer. Thank you. Sasha, do we have anything to add?
Not really. I think that Svitlanka covered it pretty much. So
yeah,
it was
yeah,
very extensive.
It's very nice to hear this. That you actually have an answer to this kind of question and the problem that arises. It would be interesting to see how you guys tackle it as you grow, because as you if you're like in 1,000 people.
I mean, we're growing all the time, but so, yeah.
No, I know. I mean, like
it becomes more challenging.
It becomes more challenging.
Yes,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But anyway, yeah. So I think we're kind of out of time. So any kind of closing words, maybe to some of the talent who wants to join your studio, or clients that you want to attract.
Join us and trust us. That's it.
Thank you so much, Wes. That was perfect.
Thanks for enjoying another episode of the 80 Level Roundtable podcast. Check out upcoming episodes on the 80 Level website at 80.lv. Join our career site at 80.lv/RFP. And share our podcast with friends and on your social networks.